King Von, real name Davon Bennett, was born on August 9, 1994 in Chicago, Illinois, growing up on West 78th and South Hermitage in an area known as Killer Ward, an area mainly affiliated with the Chicago gangs, the Gangster Disciples, and the Black Peace Stones. Von would attend Barton Elementary School in the area, but despite starting life as a fairly normal kid in Chicago, he would be subjected to the influence of gangbanging in his family home from a young age. His father was Walter E. Bennett, aka Silk, a well-known street dude from nearby Ada Park. Von was mainly raised by his mother, as his father was in and out of jail throughout his childhood. But Von's father was apparently a legend in the streets, with ties to the street gang, the Black Disciples. However, much like Von, despite the fearsome reputation he'd earned in the streets, it would ultimately be this proximity to gang life that would lead to his father's demise, as King Von's dad Silk was shot dead when Von was only 11 years old, apparently being targeted by a sniper outside of a skating rink, according to an interview with King Von's uncle.
Rest in peace, King Von. Rest in peace, Silk. That's crazy. Like, I'm with Big Bro every day. My kill his daddy with a sniper rifle. This get deep, though. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, sniper. I hit him with a sniper rifle. They at the skating rink, but you know, that's another story.
It seemed clear that King Von's father Silk was remembered as a legend of the block. However, coping with the loss of his father at such a young age clearly had a negative effect on the mindset of a young King Von. He would tweet and rap in freestyles years later that he simply couldn't sleep after his father's death.
They killed my daddy, I couldn't even go to sleep.
And throughout his teenage years, he would post RIP tributes to his father on Twitter to commemorate his birthdays. Naturally, Von would follow in his father's footsteps, getting involved in local gang politics at a young age, with Von actually telling 16-shot visuals in his very first interview that he got involved in the streets in 4th grade, eventually getting his hands on guns by the time he got to high school.
You was out here toting pipes in 4th grade, like when you started?
I probably had a BB gun or something. It wasn't that heck, like, it ain't good. I just been, you know, in the streets. There's also, I just like being outside. You know, one of the little boys that like sleeping out, just being outside all day, just doing bad. Man, the gun, all that stuff, that shit come to play to like what? High school. Yeah, like late 8th grade or some 7th, 8th grade when it really got to that point where you gotta hurt somebody or somebody trying to hurt you or you gotta protect yourself.
Von would rap on the unreleased song Wait that he jumped off the porch, getting deeply involved in gang politics in 2006 when he was just 12 years old. Von would initially be a member of a local street crew affiliated with the Gangster Disciples called Killer Ward, being seen in numerous group pictures with that crew. And affiliates from the area would later post tweets suggesting that Von was indeed putting in work for this crew during his time gangbanging in Killer Ward, with Von himself corroborating that he was close to the members in Killer Ward where he was born, but making it clear that he's always been a member of the Black Disciples due to his family affiliation. Now, Von would live around Killer Ward up to around 2008 or 9, after which he would eventually move to the infamous Parkway Gardens housing development. This housing complex is notorious for its affiliations with the Black Disciples street gang. Parkway Gardens would later be referred to by insiders as O Block, but prior to that, it was referred to as Wick City. And here, King Von would meet many of the people who would end up having a huge influence on his life and career. People famous for their affiliation to O Block, whether through the gang wars going on there, or through the music that had been made about the gang war. People like Boss Top, Chief Keef, T-Roy, White, Duke, BJ, Big A, Trey 5, Sharoid, J Money, Platoon, and countless other people that played a big role in Von's life growing up. Von would also attend a new school in the area, the Hyde Park Academy, where he would attend with people from other rival territories with affiliations to the Gangster Disciples. People like FBG Duck, who would even claim in a Twitter exchange in 2014 to have plotted to beat King Von up on the school bus, and people like Lil Mark, who Von would even be seen in throwback pictures with before their feud had escalated into something deadly. Von and his friends started out their gangbanging careers with fistfights with the ops at school, schoolyard scuffles that would unfortunately escalate over the coming years, developing into full-blown gang war with firearms involved. Over time, a teenage Von would begin getting more and more involved in Chicago's street gang conflicts, apparently bringing guns to school as young as age 13. Chop Squad, who went to school with both Von and G Herbo, would claim that Von would even show off guns in class, with it apparently being Von himself who started the trend of teenage gangbangers in their school bringing guns to class.
Von was the type of person to bring a pole to school at 13 for. Like, that's what me and Herb was talking about. He was like, he knew it was real when Von walked up to him in school. He was like, he had flashed the pole or something. He was like, Herb knew every day from there it was up. He was like, oh, we bringing guns to school? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, it's on now.
Oh,
He's like,
man.
every day from there, everybody brought guns to school.
Oh, man.
And he's like, Von was the one to start that off.
In fact, G Herbo would even later rap about this on a collaboration with Von called FaceTime, saying that Von showed him a revolver in freshman orientation, an experience which led G Herbo to begin bringing guns to school himself too. Now, King Von was apparently out of control as a youngster. According to one story, Von actually did a shooting on prom night whilst wearing his suit, after literally tweeting out that somebody better not try him in his suit. So naturally, you can imagine Von ended up spending a significant amount of time in trouble with the law as a teenager, with large patches of his most formative years spent inside jail cells. Von went to jail for the first time around August 2010 at age 16 for armed robbery, apparently robbing someone for their car at gunpoint. Something that he would actually later refer to on his song Armed and Dangerous, saying that he was arrested on August 11th, 2 days after his 17th birthday, when he was offered 21 to 45 years in a plea deal. Von would end up spending time in boot camp, an intense military-style juvenile program, ultimately rewarding him with early release. But soon after that initial charge, Von would catch another in January 2011, ultimately spending 15 months behind bars as a juvenile, being locked up between December 2010 and March 2012. And during this time of incarceration, Von's best friend T-Roy would tweet calling for his release. Eventually, in March 2012, Von would be a free man once again, but he was only free for a matter of months, from March to November 2012. But during this time, Von would undergo a transformation, going from a gun-toting stick-up kid to a full-fledged killer after witnessing the death of one of his close friends, which, as he put it, turned him into a demon. Before we get into the first murders that King Von was allegedly involved in, I just want to take the time to consider the real reasons why he would be motivated to kill in the first place. Despite covering a lot of gangsters who are hardened killers, it's important to consider the social circumstances that need to exist for a teenage boy to start committing murders. Firstly, these areas where King Von grew up in Southside Chicago, Killer Ward and O Block, are incredibly poor and dangerous areas, with the latter even being described by the local Sun-Times newspaper as the most dangerous block in Chicago. Part of the reason why so many of these gang murders in Chicago go unsolved is due to the failure of policing in these areas. Someone like King Von grew up seeing death and destruction as a completely normal thing. And if the police never come to your area to solve crimes or deliver justice, it's easy to see why you would place more trust in street justice than in the state. Furthermore, you really have to ponder whose fault is it really that somewhere like O Block ended up being so poor and dangerous. While it's easy to blame the gangsters and killers there for cultivating a lawless environment, the city and the state politicians ultimately have failed to create the economic circumstances for someone to grow up safely in these areas. Had there been better economic prospects in the hoods of Chicago, perhaps many of these young men wouldn't have been forced into a life of crime and violence. Furthermore, when it comes to the analysis of King Von's eventual transformation into what some have described as a serial killer, there's actually an argument to be made that geography may have played a part in King Von feeling like he could get away with so many murders. The 70s to the 2000s have actually been described as the golden age of serial murder, and one possible cause for this phenomenon around this period has been cited as urbanization and the concentration of inner city living. Some people have said that putting so many people in such close proximity ends up offering a unique level of anonymity when it comes to committing crimes in these complicated, busy and overpopulated areas. Put simply, this means that in O Block, the sheer amount of people, overlapping gang conflicts, and normalization of violence on the streets means that somebody like King Von could kill multiple people without attracting too much attention to him personally. As sad as it is to say, in the eyes of the cops, a victim is just another casualty of the gang war rather than a specific crime that could be solved. And it's these circumstances that were the perfect conditions for a young King Von to begin killing people in his community with minimal consequences. And whilst King Von was in jail, gun violence had raged on between the Black Disciples from Wick City and the rival Gangster Disciples from St. Lawrence and Eberhard Avenues, or STL-EBT. And during this time whilst King Von was incarcerated, a 15-year-old gangster disciple from the rival hood by the name of Tuka was murdered. Real name Shondale Gregory, Tuka was shot dead at a bus stop on the 600 block of East 63rd Street on the 12th of January 2011 at around 6:48 PM. It was around that time that a masked gunman jumped out of a vehicle, shooting Tuka several times. Tuka was hated by his rivals from the Black Disciples, and over the next decade, BDs would continue to disrespect him on social media and in popular songs. And in honor of their fallen friend, Gangster Disciples from St. Lawrence and Eberhard would rename their area Tukaville. It's never been fully revealed to the public who killed Tuka, but ever since, there has been intense speculation that a boy named O.D. Perry from Wick City might have had something to do with it. This is partly due to him being pictured regularly with a silver revolver, and the witness report from the Tuka murder stated that Tuka was actually shot with a long-barreled silver revolver. Regardless of whether or not O.D. was really the person who killed Tuka, that didn't really matter, because later that year, on August 10th, 2011, in an act of retaliation, O.D. Perry was killed just outside Parkway Gardens. He would suffer multiple gunshot wounds, including one to the neck, at about 11:35 PM. Just like Tukaville, Wick City was also renamed in the memory of their fallen friend O.D., O-Block, and it's believed that one of the shooters who killed O.D. was a female teenage shooter by the name of Jakira Barnes, or K.I. Following the murder, K.I. would begin to pose on social media with a silver revolver, similar to the one that O.D. was known to carry, and her rumoured involvement in this murder of a beloved O-Block member would lead to K.I. becoming a major target herself, with matters not helped by the fact that she would regularly tweet insulting O.D. Perry and alluding to having killed him, along with others who would openly claim that K.I. made the O, meaning that she killed O.D. and was the one that caused Wick City to change the name of their block to O-Block. But the tragedies in O-Block were far from over. On the 18th of October 2011, another O-Block native by the name of Patoon, real name Edward Riley, would be shot dead inside O-Block after being approached by two people with firearms. Another devastating loss to the community would come when 19-year-old Sherroyd Liggins would be shot in the head and left for dead on February the 16th, 2012, also at O-Block. This murder was particularly notable for the fact that it was believed that Sherroyd was killed by a Tukaville shooter by the name of Boss Trell. As the gang war in his neighbourhood continued to take more and more of his friends' lives, King Von would get more and more involved, continuing to play a role in the gang war going on in Chicago's street underworld. Von later rapped on the song Don't Want to Be Me that everything changed for him in 2012, and that this is when he decided to get more active in the gang war, with Von saying specifically that the deaths of O.D. and Patoon completely changed his plans and led him to put on a mask and get active in the gang war. Now, there's a lot of speculation about the exact murders that Von was allegedly involved in, and we might never know definitively if he was truly involved in all the violence that he was rumoured to be associated with, but the very first murder that Von was associated with took place on April the 28th, 2012, when a group of 4 men would catch a man called King Doc, real name Marlon Monroe, shooting him as he walked into a convenience store, with Doc apparently stumbling into a patch of tall weeds after the shooting, where he would pass away and lay undiscovered for hours. Doc would eventually be found dead by his 16-year-old cousin, Modell McCambry. Doc would be remembered as an original native of St. Lawrence and Eberhart Avenues, with his affiliation to the area likely the reason that the killers from O-Block would target him, despite the fact that Doc had apparently left the gang life behind him, becoming a painter to get out of the streets. Apparently hurt by the death of his cousin, Modell, that boy who discovered Doc's body, would then begin to get more involved in the gangs in the area too, beginning to hang around with people like K.I. and FBG Duck, as well as being seen on social media with guns. In fact, it's actually around this time that social media begins to play a bigger and bigger role in the gang war in Chicago. And during this time, King Von himself would become a prolific user of Twitter, beginning a flurry of activity on the platform after signing up in June 2012, and going on to tweet constantly about his activities in the streets, seemingly with no fear about incriminating himself. Von would openly claim to be drilling in the name of O.D. Perry. He would say that he was like Phineas and Ferb in the streets with his best friend and fellow O-Block shooter T-Roy, warning ops not to diss them, claiming to shoot people like it's nothing. He would tweet that he's been drilling from young and even wants to kill cops too. He would say outright that he will whack people. He would regularly diss numerous rival hoods and gangs, and be claiming to be paranoid due to having so many people trying to kill him. Von claimed on Twitter to get so enraged whenever he hears the name Tuka or St. Lawrence that his trigger finger just starts itching. But during this time that Von was tweeting openly about all the crimes that he was willing to do in the streets, these crimes would continue to play out. On August the 7th, 2012, Von would make a tweet saying that homicide is in the air and that it smells like a graveyard. Then, in the early hours of the morning the following day, on August the 8th, 2012, a group of guys from O-Block, rumoured to include King Von and T-Roy, would be out looking for enemies to kill. Dirty Rel, real name Terrell Joshua, an older member with affiliations to St. Lawrence, Eberhart, and Jarrow City, who had actually moved out of Chicago but was back in town, would end up being shot dead and found on a sidewalk on the first block of East 56th Street in Washington Park just before 3:30 AM. However, in this case, retaliation would come fast. As the day of August 8th, 2012 goes by, that same evening, around 11:30 PM, King Von is out with his close friend White White, real name Tony Dunn. They would go to a convenience store together on East 63rd Street and South Martin Luther King Drive. Here, Von would go inside the store whilst White White waited outside. At this point, a gunman pulls up, shooting White White in the back. With a police officer on the scene, even returning fire and hitting the shooter, who ultimately managed to escape. White would be pronounced dead in the early hours of the morning on August the 9th, 2012. This date just so happened to be King Von's 18th birthday. This was a devastating incident for Von, who would tweet numerous times about the murder of his friend Whitey, including this one where he said that he had just bought Whitey a pill and gone inside the store, only coming back outside to find a crowd surrounding his shot friend and at first believing that Whitey would be okay. After this, Von would tweet messages saying that this killing is what led him to act out, and in the days following, he would be pledging to kill his enemies publicly. Von later elaborated on his mindset around this period in his song Demon, saying outright that witnessing the death of his close friend Whitey on his 18th birthday is the exact thing that turned him into a demon. And Von would rap that after this, him and his right-hand man T-Roy would be doing hits back-to-back to avenge this tragic loss. Von would apparently be trying to kill much more ruthlessly after this, desperately wanting to get at rival shooters K.I. and Wooski, who had mocked White's death on Twitter. In September 2012, King Von and others caught K.I. on the train, apparently beating her up and mocking her on Twitter in the aftermath. Von would eventually catch up with K.I. in much more deadly circumstances, but not for a couple of years. For now, he would continue to gangbang in the streets with his O-Block brothers like T-Roy, ultimately winding up implicated in numerous murders as he continued to seek revenge for the murder of White, and one body at a time, building up a fearsome reputation as one of O-Block's most ruthless killers.